On the afternoon of October 7 of this year, 5 Jewish children were playing in the Shawnee Park in Skokie, a quiet suburb next to Chicago with a large percentage of Jewish population and rapidly growing number of Muslims, Arabs from Middle East, North Africa, and American blacks from Chicago and Evanston. As the kids were playing, a crowd of older kids, maybe 20 of them, walked up and asked, "Are you Jewish?" When the children said yes, they were cursed at F Israel, you baby killers. And then pellets flew, gel gun shots, sharp stings on legs. A child cried, others ran, police came, reports were filed, and then silence. This happened not in some far-off city, but as I said, in Skokie, the town that once stood as a monument to memory, a place built by Holocaust survivors who thought they were finally escaping this question, are you Jewish? Skokie is the first suburb in America that I visited. I visited it because it was the suburb where Fred and Shirley Richters lived. May the memory of them be a blessing. These were the people who made me a part of their family after I ended up in America in 1974, being forced to leave my country, the Soviet Union. 3 years later, at that time I lived in LaGrange, Illinois, Skokie made world headlines when American Nazis tried to march through its streets. Survivors of Auschwitz, Treblinka, Bergen-Belsen lived in Skokie then. They lined up the street in expectation of Nazi march, telling the world, never again, not here. Skokie became a byword for moral courage and for the belief that America would protect the persecuted. But less than 50 years later, exactly on the anniversary of the Palestinian Hamas massacre of Israeli Jews of October 7, 2023, American Jewish children were attacked for being Jewish, again, and of all places right here in Skokie. The town that once fought off Nazis must now fight off its indifference. What happened 3 weeks ago is not an isolated story. In 2021, 4 years ago, a block and a half from Shawnee Park, windows of the Persian Hebrew congregation were smashed, and a Palestinian flag hung on the shards of glass. 2 years later, in 2023, the Arab students there organized a student sit-in for Palestine, which ended with chants from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, a call for the genocide of Jews in Israel and beyond. Jewish students there reported feeling trapped and afraid to come in the halls of their own school. But now, 2 years later, exactly on October 7 as well, but now of 2025, even Skokie playgrounds echo with anti-Semitic hatred. This is not a simple coincidence. The Skokie police agreed that this is a hate crime. Good. That's a step one in the right direction. But the newly elected leftist leadership of the village, elected with great help by some of the so-called progressive Jews, quickly marked the investigation closed, saying only that the resolution is ongoing. Mayor Ann Tennes, Tennes, issued a bland statement. There's no place for hate in Skokie. But these meaningless words don't protect Skokie Jewish children? What does she intend to do so anti-Jewish crimes won't be repeated? We want to know how many attackers were there. What are the consequences to these minors and their parents? Minors supposedly being attackers, being supposedly minors. What is the nature of Skokie outreach to them? Outreach to victims as well. Given that there is no report, no transparency, and no plan of action, this mayor has the audacity to call Skokie a community, quote, built on inclusion, unquote. Yeah, we know from April's election, inclusion of everybody but Jews. For Jews, such inclusion without protection is nothing but hypocrisy. A playground hate crime followed by bureaucratic silence is a shameful paralysis. It is not progress. Following an example set by the mayor, the police did the paperwork and moved on. The schools, they're silent. The parents of attackers were not called for any conversation there. They're invisible. Yeah, parents. The children of that age are not able to invent such anti-Semitic slogans themselves. They simply repeat what they hear in their homes, online, in school, or pick up some whispers of adults pretending not to hear. When a 12-year-old screams baby killer at another child, he has learned it in all likelihood in his home. And there is a lot of such homes in these neighborhoods where such minors probably absorbed such ideas in. That is why the accountability for things like that must begin at homes of these minors. If you raise a child who attacks Jews for being Jews, you share a responsibility for that act, morally. If not criminally, then at least by way of the civil law. Illinois law shields minors' identities. That is right and proper. But there is no law against transparency of a group. The village can and must publish the identified results of this group action. How many attackers were there? What disciplinary actions are going to be taken against them? What actions will be taken with regard to the parents of these attackers? Silence is not appropriate response to such crime. It only encourages more such evil acts. If it chooses to, Skokie is able to protect privacy of minors and show accountability at the same time. Mayor Tens and her trustees must prove that Skokie still remembers what it is. They must prove it by their action. First, public reporting. Although we are dealing with underage criminals, report, even without their name, still must be complete and made public. Second, mandatory anti-bias training, especially with the emphasis on anti-Semitism. This training must be given to all village police, park, and school personnel. Third, a joint hate incident task force must be established, linking the village, police, and school district. Fourth, a crucial step in a restorative justice with teeth is a direct apology, a supervised community service, and bias education involving both youth and their parents must follow. And five, visible patrols in parks, especially in those areas which clearly showed themselves to have a lot of anti-Semitic residents, with a clear signage and hotline that works. This is not vengeance. It is proper governance. Protection of citizens and their children is not politics. It is an integral duty of the political leadership. These actions may or may not work, but they must be taken. Every generation tests whether never again was a vow or simply a slogan. Ours is being tested now, not in far-off Europe or the land of Israel, but in our own park, our own schools, our own neighborhoods. What happened in Shawnee Park was a small act of hate, but a large failure of moral vigilance. It tells every Jewish child, you're safe until someone decides you aren't. And it also justifies every indifferent bystander. You are free to look the other way. Call it just a thing that kids do. Skokie is how history begins again. So here is what you, my viewer, can do. Join me this coming Monday, October 27, at 6:30 at Skokie Village Hall. Stand up, speak up, ask your mayor and trustees the questions they may have avoided. Ask the police for transparency. Ask the schools for their policy regarding anti-Semitism. Ask the Human Relations Commission for a report with dates and figures, not empty adjectives. And then follow up on November 3. Come again to hold the village leadership accountable for their promises. When good people stay home on such meeting nights, social peace dies. We owe it to our children, Jewish and not, to make Skokie once again what it claimed to be, a sanctuary of conscience, a town that remembers, a community that protects. Silence is the seedbed of hatred. This coming Monday, we break the silence. See you at 6:30 p.m.